schedule the whole.
Kyle's going to beat me to a pulp if I don't do this right. Now I can't enunciate into this mic, but here we go. So our next talk is from Amanda Berlin, and we are going to hear about shooting fish in a barrel and other bad fish puns. On to you, Amanda.
Thank you. So, I apologize up front for any poor humor. Or don't. I don't really apologize. That's just who I am. So, this is my talk, Shooting Fish in a Barrel. It's based on the end user being the weakest link and some user education that I put forth at the hospital that I used to work at. I worked there for 7 years as a network analyst. Started there as a help desk analyst. And this was about the user education and program that we did with live fire fishing exercises. And how horribly bad it went in the beginning and how much improvement that we made further on down the line. So a couple of the metrics that I took it was about 10-month program that I put in place before I actually left, were users targeted, users successfully fished, and fishes reported. So we'll talk about some of those screw-ups, what I would change, and what I really liked about the program, how it worked, that kind of stuff. So this is me. I'm Amanda, Info Sister on Twitter and a bunch of other places. I live in Northern Ohio, so it takes me about an hour and 15 to get here. And I have 3 wonderful kids. Currently, I'm a network security engineer at Hurricane Labs, based out of Independence, Ohio. And I work with checkpoint firewalls, unfortunately. So this is kind of the stuff that I used to do. I was a Windows admin for a long time, doing a lot of stuff with Active Directory, Windows servers, Exchange. I also was kind of a jack of all trades. We did things in our department anyways. There were network analysts that pretty much did everything infrastructure and security. We didn't have anybody that was dedicated to security. It was kind of it's everybody's job type thing. And so in that aspect, we would do things like storage and networking, Windows servers, Linux servers, you name it. That's pretty much everything that we did. I was primarily Windows admin just because that's what my cert was in, and nobody else wanted to. I was also the only purple team member, and if anybody knows what purple teaming is, blue team's defense, right? You're the one that's hardening down the server, switches, environment. Red team's offense, you're the one attacking. Purple team is a combination of both. Red and blue equals purple. And that just meant I was a blue team member that would attack our inside resources. And I did this with this phishing campaign. So this is the company that I work for. That's all right. We had about 2,000 employees. All healthcare, mostly female because, I mean, for the most part, nurses are female. And we had about plus or minus 30 sites, so doctor's offices, other healthcare campuses, quick cares, and that kind of line of business. We already had a decent security structure. We had put a significant amount of time into our infrastructure when it came to security. When we started, it was absolutely horrible, and that's a whole other story. But at the point where we were at, we knew that our users were the weakest link. We had that proven by some of the pen tests that we had done. They always fell for phishing, and it's not hard. I mean, phishing is one of the easiest things to do to be able to get a user to go somewhere they aren't supposed to go. We already had some C-level buy-in because our CEO used to be a CIO for another hospital, so he kind of knew what threats were out there and kind of what we had to go up against. So it was nice to not have to really work for that buy-in first before we had to do the security stuff. And we had no user education for security. The only education that our user base had was all around HIPAA and PCI, and that was the one CBT test that they had to take yearly to guarantee they would continue to get their paycheck. And they gave us a $1,000 budget for this training. They knew there were other companies out there that you could pay for this kind of phishing. There's PhishMe, I think Acument does that. There's a bunch of other places that will educate your users and phish them for you. Kind of expensive, and some of them out there aren't very tailor fit for your organization. So they wanted to see what we could do for $1,000. That $1,000 didn't go towards any technology. It was all awards and prizes to get them to actually participate in the competition. So this is my first phish. I was given the okay by my boss to run this phish. Nobody in upper level management knew about it. We had no program set forth. We knew we wanted a baseline of where our users were at and how many credentials I could actually capture. I sent this out using SET, Social Engineering Toolkit, written by Dev Kennedy. And it's extremely easy to use. It comes built in a Kali. You can download it off GitHub. All command line. You can just spoof websites, send out email with attachments and stuff. This first one, I wanted to start as basic as possible. So this one actually was just from a Gmail account that I made a fake Gmail account, like company name -IT @gmail.com. And we had recently done an employee survey. Where I failed, this was the first time I had really sent out anything using SET. And what it does is it runs a web server within SET for them to connect back to. So that survey results login actually went to like a scrape of the SurveyMonkey website that they were supposed to log into. And that's where I was going to try and capture their credentials. My web server crashed because I hadn't really tested it much. I figured, this can't be too hard. I'll just send it to all 50 email addresses that I had, and we'll see where it goes. That's why it says sorry about the broken link, because I figured I had sent out another email before this, and I figured, well, I mean, I'll just try again. They're not going to know. So, I mean, it's already looks fishy to me, maybe not necessarily them, and maybe this will give it a little bit more credibility, saying that I have an update and we knew that it was broken. So those are the results of my first phish. The email addresses I gathered were with the harvester. It's a Python script, and it'll actually scrape like LinkedIn, Google, Bing, bunch of places for whatever @domain name for email addresses. And those are the 50 email addresses that I used that were all in use at our company. And I was able to get 16 usernames and passwords with only 4 reports.
Did you have any people who were off limits, like, oh yeah, go ahead and do this, but don't talk to that one?
I had no people that were off limits. The only time that we were ever given an off limits thing wasn't for anything internal. It was for our external pen testers that we paid to do the third-party assessment. They were given, hey, don't target the CFO and CEO, which honestly were two of the most targeted people in the company, especially the CFO. He got stuff all the time. So not very good for reports, only getting 4. I also hadn't trained the help desk on what to do with the reports. They also didn't really know about any of my phishing attempts. So the whole IR response was not good either. Here's a second phish. I actually took our, where we would log in to get like our W-2s and our paychecks and everything. So we had 2,000 employees, right? It was hard to to split that up so not everybody got the same email every time, because I wanted enough of a spot check that everybody would be able to get the training that they needed without everybody getting every email. So what I wanted to do was each time I would send it to about a fourth or maybe less of the company. That way I would have a nice 4 months of one type of fish, another 4 months of another type of fish, because if I had only ever sent it out to, 50 people at a time, nobody's ever going to get the training in the time that they need. So that's why this one's about the same thing. It's a plain text email with a link to a copied page that I'm capturing credentials on. And I still got 54 usernames and passwords. Which was really fun for me, because it was my first kind of red team exercise that I had ever done, to be able to sit there and watch people's Active Directory usernames and passwords just scroll by me on a screen. And I would spot check and verify some of them. And the link after, that's what I liked about SET too, because the link after you capture their credentials, we would actually force them to go to a page, like automatically. And I'll show you the page in a little bit, but it actually just said, you've been hacked. And it's an okay thing, and this is why. Because you don't want to just capture their credentials. They're not going to know. The half of them probably won't even know that anything was wrong. They might just think the website's broken, or it actually would also redirect them back to the real login page so they could log in. But doing kind of the bait and switch, another fish pun, would allow them, like the shock of it, to have them realize that the important information that I was giving them afterwards actually was legitimate. Like they actually were gaining something from that knowledge too. Yeah.
So reports, how are you measuring reports?
How was I measuring reports of the people reporting the fish? All manually. So either by people calling into the help desk or sending emails, or at that point I was actually letting people know in the department so they could come up, because we actually had people out on the floor, out on the nursing floors that were only like quasi-IT employees. So we had nurses that were in IT that did nurse-related IT stuff. Actually having nurses come up to them and say, is this guy, something's wrong, then that would count as a report. Not only were we counting our reports, we were also counting the reports of legitimate fishes externally as well. And I'll get into that in a little bit too. But we needed, the reason I had this, we wanted a program with teeth. The first two fishes, there was absolutely no program. There was no reason for them to report. They just did it because some of them actually knew what a fish was. So this is a little bit about the program that we put forth. So this was actually the name of our security awareness program, was Something Smells Fishy. We wanted to make it kind of catchy, put up posters, talk about it in our employee meetings, that kind of stuff. It's nice to have something easy to remember. I'm not a marketing person, but I know that probably helps. And this is some of the education that we put forth after they would click on the link. Kind of go over what phishing is with them. We actually had people stop and ask us to come and give presentations to just their department, as opposed to just hoping that they clicked on a link and went to the education. They wanted us to come and sit down and give a like a small talk or like Q&A session with their department. And this is some of the stuff I went over in those too. The next thing, we called ourselves hackers because we wanted to let them know that we were also doing something in their best interest, and not all hackers are bad. We wanted to let them know that we weren't going to try and actually steal their information. We actually we had an old nurse that had been there forever. Like, we were hoping that she would leave at some point, and she actually, every time she was phished, every single time, it did not matter. She called my boss and let him know how much she didn't appreciate being tricked, and how now she's not going to be able to trust anything we ever tell her. That wasn't everybody's response, and we were hoping she left anyways, but it was kind of funny. Some other things that we want to tell them. We were always big on sending links in emails, sending attachments in emails, and it was really hard internally to get away from that, because being able to click on a link for a new policy is something that is much easier for the user. You can't just say, hey, navigate here, click on this, click. It's more difficult on both ends. So the policies and the getting our users to actually, well, not our users, but our staff to actually adhere to these was kind of difficult. But we tried to, even if we would make a mistake and send out a link, we were trying to educate them so they didn't actually click on it no matter what. And one of the biggest things was reporting. We tried to really drive that home, that it doesn't matter if you click on it, it doesn't matter if you give your username and password. We'd prefer you didn't, but if you did, you need to report it to somebody. Here's the easiest way that you can report it. You can email us, you can create a ticket, you can call us, you can stop one of us in the hallway, but you have to report it to somebody. Otherwise, there's nothing that we're going to be able to do about it. And a couple of things that should be reported. One of the best questions I had when I was giving the one-on-one trainings is, how do we know if something looks off? A lot of it's going to be a gut feeling, but I mean, there are more that are very obvious, right? Because if it's a poor phishing attempt, the grammar's off, the images are off. You know, the whole 419 Nigerian scam thing. You can always tell that those are fake, because they really look like it. But there are more advanced attacks happening now through phishing, because people are realizing that that's the best foothold inside of a company. So being able to show them, and I know you can fake the hover over on the links, but the fact that even if it's not something you're expecting, don't click on it. If it's not somebody that you normally talk to, or if it is someone you normally talk to that doesn't send you happy cat gifts, ask them if they meant to. So being able to drive that kind of stuff in was helpful as well. So these are some of the contest rules, and I also have all this out on my blog as downloads. I stripped like all of our company information off of it, so you can use this kind of stuff if you have a company that you think might benefit. I actually had a friend of mine that runs IT at a bank, like a small credit union, use it. Just because I would rather you take this and edit it than have to go through the process of creating everything yourself, because it was really a pain. So some more contest rules. We had some people forwarding stuff from their home email address to work to see if it would enable them to get in the contest. So what would happen is, every time they would report, we would take their name and put it in a fishbowl. And at the end of a month, we would actually draw names, that kind of stuff. So we're trying to have people were actually trying to get their names in the contest more than once. So we had to do a bunch of contest rules. And so this was the monthly award. We actually had a coffee shop in the hospital that people would go to all the time. They had like smoothies and food and stuff like that too. So the monthly contest, we would actually have 2 winners get $10 that actually successfully reported. They would get their name drawn out, and they would get a $10 card. There was like this rewards program that the hospital in general had that they would get entered into for more prizes or whatever. And we also had like some gimmicky stuff. So my director actually had like this great motivational poster that had something about waves and I don't know. I don't even remember what the saying was on it. But we would actually stand in front of it if they wanted to. And the person that won would get like a full rain slicker and a spear, and I would be holding a fish. So they would get their picture taken, and it would be put in our monthly newsletter. So it was really gimmicky, but a couple of people thought it was kind of funny. So quarterly, we had 2 winners also. We stuck with the Phish theme on this one because those were the 2 that we thought would be good. And they would get, what was it, $50 to Bass Pro or Red Lobster. And then the end of the year grand prize, which I'm sad I wasn't around to give away, was $300 to Amazon. So it was giving them incentive. A couple people have some really good articles and talks about like gamification of this kind of stuff. It really helps if they have something to actually get into it and a reason. All right, and these are a couple of the fishes that I did. Oh, so this is the page that they would be redirected to. It was actually a little PowerPoint slide within the browser that led them through the education, and letting them know that it was okay was a big thing too. I've talked to some people actually that work for companies actually have wall of shames for the people that have clicked on their internal phishing. You're not going to do anything with that. Actually telling them that it's okay and we're here to help you is really important in my mind. So this part was really painful for me. The phishing part was fun. Capturing credentials was fun. Actually, keeping track of the data was a gigantic pain in the ass. So we have SET, right? So SET actually gives you an XML report of the users and the usernames and the passwords that were given when you phished in an XML file. It will also, if you do it a different way, will tell you who clicked, like what email address clicked on the link that you sent. But I have the XML file. I also have the full Active Directory list of email addresses that I wanted to target. And then I had a manual list of everybody that's reported it. And it was in a gigantic spreadsheet. Huge pain to take care of, especially on some of these. I was sending it to like 1,400 people per month. So it was a gigantic waste of time, and I'll get into that too.
So this is Excel, right?
It was Excel. I mean, I know some of you love Excel. So, I mean, it could have been like Notepad, which would have been way worse. So these next slides are actual after the program's been greenlit. And it actually, between this one and the last one that I did, was a good 6 months before we actually got all of the rules okayed, everything okayed by upper management, everything locked down as far as what we were giving for rewards, the education that our help desk needed, the education that the rest of our department needed. Was a full 6 months before we actually got this program off the ground, and January was when I was able to actually do the first official phish. So I wanted to start out playing again, because the first 300 or so users, it had been 6 months. Some of them weren't there anymore. I refreshed the list, started from scratch on all 2,000 email addresses or so. And I wanted to just, start from scratch with the program. So this was the first one. Kind of the same thing, from a Gmail address, plain line of text, phishing link for capturing credentials. And I got 322, 34% usernames and passwords, which was very scary because those were all Active Directory usernames and passwords. A lot of these people had local admin privileges. A couple of the people were in our department. Some of the people were higher profile, so C-levels, doctors. you name it. But that's a large percentage. And I only left this up for 5 days. It was very scary. I mean, I kind of got yelled at just because I was sitting behind my computer, like jumping for joy every time I got a username and password, and my boss wanted to know what the hell was wrong with me. Because it is a bad thing. Like, I realize that it's a bad thing, but the fact that they were rolling in like that also is pretty cool. Here's the February one. We kind of wanted to play off of, you've won a free gift. Click here. And I still got 16%. And really, honestly, it only takes one. It takes the right user to click on a link and give out their username and password to be able to get in remotely. This one, and I have a graph like at the end of the presentation, did not do so well. So if anybody's ever heard of March of Dimes, it's like an organization that is a charity organization. So as a hospital, it has to do with like infant death, I think. As a hospital, we really pushed this program. Like starting from January, there were people trying to raise money for March of Dimes, and I didn't think about this beforehand, but people were so desensitized to everything March of Dimes. I'm pretty sure there had to have been, 100 or so email rules saying anything March of Dimes, just trash it, because we really don't care anymore at this point. We've given you our money, leave us alone. So this one didn't really have that big of a success. So I only got 4 usernames and passwords, but you can see that the reporting has started to work because we got 37. Only out of 1,000, but still, the reporting really matters because that's when you can actually start to do your IR. This was awesome. This was a good milestone for us after starting the program. This was the first real Phish that we caught from external. It was our director of some director, I can't remember what, but he actually was in contact with the person that sent him this email, just not recently. He's like, yeah, I'm not really working with them on a project, but they sent me this with a link and it looks kind of weird. Could you take a look at it? The guy had his box popped, was sending out these emails, and this was actually a link to a phishing website to actually capture his credentials, and it was an infected website. So we kind of used him as an example, we asked him first if we could use him as an example, but just to let people know that we're not the only ones trying to do this. We're teaching you for a reason. There's people out there actually getting their boxes infected and trying to get in. And this was a great example of that. So this was one of my favorites. This is the one I did in April. I took a PayPal receipt that I had gotten in my email and just edited the HTML. I started to get a little bit more advanced with them. They weren't plain text emails anymore. I was adding some HTML. I wasn't always looking to capture credentials. I just kind of wanted to get some of the information out there for reporting. So it's saying that Kohl's had charged them via PayPal $575 and shipped some fine china to some dude in South Africa. We had a lady report it, but it didn't go exactly how I thought it should have. She actually canceled her PayPal and her Kohl's card, which I thought was funny to start with. I kind of felt bad, but why are you using your work email for PayPal and Kohl's anyways? We kind of gave her like a complimentary gift card because we did to Kohl's. Yes, we gave her a complimentary Kohl's gift card. Bought her some plates and cups, and so I did feel bad, but it was kind of fun because I think this one still came. Yeah, that one still came from a Gmail address. So I don't know. I didn't feel too bad. And this one was just for the reporting only. I wasn't capturing any credentials, but we still, out of almost 1,200, got 261 reports. This one got a lot of reports. Emails, phone calls. After this one, I think, is when I started telling the help desk beforehand to make sure they actually had coverage, because it just blew up their phones. And I didn't care because I wasn't in the same room. So I did my time in the help desk. You guys can too. So yeah, I started to let them know beforehand so they actually had enough coverage, actually knew what they were supposed to be doing with the reporting. But that one was kind of fun. This is actually our third-party pen testing company that we had used. They let me know that I could use this for my presentation, which was awesome. So I don't do this shit for a living. I was just a blue teamer. I made up stuff because I think social engineering's cool. But they actually legitimately do this for a living. We were paying them to do this. And ta-da! 0 people got phished on the first email, and 6 reports. The second one is the 2 lines on the bottom. They sent 59 emails. Depending on who you talk to, is if this was a legitimate phish or not. They forgot to turn off the web server or whatever, and somebody clicked on it after the time period. But technically, they still got phished. Yeah, probably. Who knows? At least it wasn't anybody from my department, which was always sad. So we'll talk a little bit about the IR in place for things like this. So this is the actual timetable of when the email came in from the third-party pen testing team and what we did with it. So the campaign began at 10:30. 3 minutes later, we had a C-level executive forward us the email and call us to let us know that it had come through. We had regular users forwarding the email, and 11 minutes later, we had null routed the IP address. And then we had more reports after that. So phishing emails are always going to get through. People are always going to click on them. People are going to give up their usernames and passwords. But what you actually do when you get a report makes all the difference. That could have killed their shells going back. That could have stopped anybody else from clicking on it. We could go through our Exchange or whatever other email system that we would have had to delete any other email that had the same type of characteristics, so nobody else even had the chance. And then we go back to some of the ones that I was creating. So playing around a little bit more with HTML to make it look a little bit more legit. I wasn't capturing any credentials on this one either, but we still got eight reports. This one went over really well. Right across the street from our main campus, we had a Jimmy John's, and just had opened. All I did on this was attach as a PDF our training material. I wasn't keeping track of click counts. I wasn't trying to get usernames and passwords. I just wanted to get the education material out there to as many people as possible. So many people stopped us and said, "Good one, good job," because we really did want 20% off to Jimmy John's. So we got 31 reports on that one. I actually was at like a physical therapy session, and the one lady was talking about it. I'm like, "Oh yeah, that was me that sent those out." I'm sorry that you didn't actually get a coupon. And this was the last one that I sent before I left. One of our head C-level people's name was Bev. So this is actually a template that you can use in set. There's, I think, 4 or 5 different templates in set. And that PDF, again, is just some of our training material. And this is what people see a lot of the times from top boxes is just this automated stuff. And it was my last month working there, so I said, F it, and I just sent to everybody. So I really didn't get a whole lot of stats on this one because I was on my way out, and I didn't really get a chance to. I tried to ask them afterwards if they would send it to me, and I didn't really get any response. Can you see that at all? Or is it just really bad? Is it? I'm sorry. So the purple lines, if you can tell, are the darkest ones. Were the emails sent. The light blue were who was phished, and the red was who actually reported. What I noticed in this were a couple good things. One thing, that the phishing percentages went down. And two, that I started to peter off when it came to actual reports. I'm not sure exactly why. At the time, we were going to start to work with marketing to actually get posters up on the walls and talk to more people about it. It was really difficult with a 24/7 operation, and that spread out to actually get the information out to everybody about the program itself. And another crappy graph you probably can't read. The purple was fished percentage, and blue was reported percentage. So we went from almost nothing being reported to a little bit better, and a lot less being fished. So I'll let you read that because I love XKCD. So one of the things that I learned, well, after talking to a bunch of people about their own phishing programs, I wanted this slide to be about you get more flies with honey than vinegar, and then I tried to Google a meme and found this. But giving them positive responses about your program and about the mistakes they made is always going to have them want to learn more. You're not going to be able to smack them around and say you're an idiot for clicking that and expect them to actually want to come to you for help. They're not going to want to report it because you're the mean dude in IT. Actually being able to talk to your user base and let them know you're there to help them, it goes a long way when it comes to their education. Another XKCD. So someone is always going to click. We talked about that already. Just the fact that IR really, really makes a difference. And no one is exempt. I got multiple physicians, our CEO, which is that whole 6-month gap after he actually successfully got phished. We had to sit down and talk about creating an actual education program, and people in our department. So people that knew the education was going on, knew I was phishing people, didn't exactly know what day, came in after a three-day weekend, Monday morning, just trying to blast through and get through all their emails, boom, username and password. And he felt stupid afterwards, but you can't ever take any of those things for granted. And getting the point across, going back to the fact that we really didn't get the program out to that many people. I kind of wish I would have started sooner, so I would have been able to educate more people and talk about it and have this kind of an interaction with them. I kind of wanted to. We would have guest speakers sometimes at our multiple employee meetings, go over something like this that isn't hard to understand. I'm not really going over anything super technical. It's important though. So being able to do that, I really wish I would have had that time. So some of the stuff I wish I could have changed. So definitely telling the help desk and the people that would have responded to the reports, kind of letting them know up front what to say other than, oh, sorry, I don't, they didn't really know what to do with the information when somebody called and said, hey, I just gave out my username and password. They had absolutely no idea what they should do with that information. They were hired to sit there and reset passwords and reimage boxes. They didn't know what IR was. They didn't know what to do with it. So being able to teach them what you want them to do with that information was something we should have done in the beginning. But running a program like this, you see where your gaps are. We would have never known that unless we would have waited for somebody to actually give their username and password to a real threat. And more automation, just because that Excel spreadsheet was horrid. I still have it's like PTSD, just flashbacks to this horrible Excel spreadsheet. I wanted to add some vishing and physical security stuff. It was kind of hard in such a small company. I'd been there for a while. I was in the help desk, so my face was always out there on the floor, so people kind of knew who I was. But being able to, I kind of wanted to swap services with another hospital in the area. Say, hey, you can try and walk in and social engineer us, and we'll do the same thing for you. We'll just do it for free every other month or something. That's something that we're also looking towards. And then more measurements. That's actually the logo for Phishing Frenzy. It was a project that I was working on for a while, and I just got too busy. But I actually wanted to integrate. They actually have a really good platform for red teamers that will send out emails and kind of keep track of the metrics. It just didn't do the best when you're trying to do it internally because it didn't keep the right metrics that I wanted. I wanted it to tie into Active Directory, which would have been really helpful, so I didn't have to do all that manually. But I think they're working on some of that stuff. And some of my other stuff, all the crap that I had in here is online.
What's that cost?
$29.95, 7 installments. Just send it. Yeah, right. You've actually all automatically been signed up by being in here. And this presentation is on my SlideShare thing. So if you want to get to these links, some of the other stuff like Trusted Sec has a blog with some security education awareness. Ben 10 also did the gamification talk. Some other stuff. Iron Geeks website's up here. Yay. A book I'm in that I have to plug because Bill Gardner is awesome and invited me to write some stuff in his book. And then that's the Phishing Frenzy website. And that's it. Any questions? Did I have a banana hammock in this talk? I think that's in the other talk, isn't it? Maybe, maybe not. I'm sorry for the lack of banana hammocks. There's always more talks that I can put them in. This one was all about fish puns.